what's up? I wanted to jump on here really quick. I'm not going to be on for too long, but I wanted to say hi because I haven't been on here in forever. So I wanted to say hi and also see what you wanted to discuss in future videos. But I just finished one of my new songs, and the doll that I used is the main doll that I always use, but this time it was a disaster with that doll. And if I did not have my hard disk recorder and make backup copies and things like that, it would have completely taken out my song. So I'll explain what happened. So I was working on a new song. I did all my parts, did guitar, bass, drums, everything, vocals. I put a lot into this song. I really went all out in the vocals, gave a really powerful performance. Couldn't talk all the next day pretty much because I put so much into the vocals. I was extremely loud with the guitars, like over the top, turned up the amp super loud. Not something that I felt like having to do all over again for no reason, because everything was just the way that I wanted it to be. I got it on tape, used analog tape throughout the whole process. I'm like, great. Went through, lined up all of the tape tracks with the drums, recorded the bass. Everything was just about finished with the song. And when I was transferring it over to master for the final mix down, thanks so much for the like. When I did that, hold on just a second, let me make sure my settings. Okay, great. There we go. When I was transferring it over to my computer for the very final stage, my computer started freezing up. Okay, whatever. Went ahead, pressed restart, came back, and it's like, this file's corrupted. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to stress out. I just made a backup copy like 5 minutes ago on the computer. It said, this file is corrupted, broken, cannot be opened. And from what I know about that error, when you get that error, there's nothing that you can do. So I went back through, kept going back. I'm like, okay, well, let's go back to the beginning of the day. Same thing. I'm like, okay, that's a whole day's worth of work. Went back to the day before. Same thing. I'm like, you've got to be kidding. Like, am I about to lose the entire thing? I'd already worked on it for like 4 or 5 days at least at that point. I was really stressed out, but I was like, I've got it all on the A.24, the HD24 right there. So the one right underneath the tape machine, just like I showed you in the videos, had all of the stems on there. So I'm like, no big deal. Went ahead, turned the computer back off, loaded up everything through the mixer, and, you know, re-recorded that part to tape, back to the DAW, and was good to go. Later on, when I went to do the master for that song, the exact same error occurred again, and it erased my entire song master. But fortunately, I had it on tape. So I was able to go through. It took about an extra 20 minutes to go through and reroute it, and I was tired and I wanted to be done. But had I recorded everything to digital, I would have lost everything. So that's just a reminder, you know, if you're recording using a DAW, to always make sure to make as many copies as you can onto different devices if you can. So even when I recorded a backup copy onto a different backup hard drive on my DAW, it did not work. So I'm not probably using that DAW anymore. I ended up, to finish the master off, using an old version of that DAW, one that came out like maybe, I think it came out like 3 or 4 years ago. The same DAW I used to record a lot of the songs that I put up recently. So I was like, that's fine. I may also start using Reaper pretty soon. Because yeah, a lot of these DAWs, sometimes they can be kind of weird. You know, I've never really had that problem too often before in the past. So I also went through and I made backup copies using my Tascam that I've shown you in videos on here, of all of the stems. So if something happens to the computer, I've got backup copies. I have heard of this happening where literally a family member who does jazz music, soul, R&B, like Anita Baker kind of John Legend type of stuff. She had an album that she had been working on for, I think, like probably a decade, years. Yeah, she put a lot into it. It's, you know, multiple keyboard parts, multiple piano solos, all of these like really almost like classical music. It's a jazz record overall. And she went through, and it turned out when she went to finalize it to get it mastered, she sent it out to her mix engineer, I mean, to get it mixed and then get it mastered. Her hard drive ended up overheating and smoking, and she lost everything. I've also heard of some of my favorite bands having that happen. I know NoFX had that happen a couple years ago. They were going to do a final EP for their final tour. They ended up losing the whole thing or got corrupted, and they just said forget it because the hard drive, they said, got corrupted. I know Green Day lost an entire album like that years ago. So always make sure to back up your stems. I would say as soon as you've done like a major thing, like you finished vocals or you finished piano or you finished whatever instrument you play, ukulele, whatever, try to make sure you have it in a backup place. So, yeah, making hard disk stems is really helpful. I also have had, over the years, computers just for whatever reason malfunction, and having these little CDs, some of these CDs go way back, you know, or DVDs, I mean. So it's helpful to, like, you know, regardless of what you use, to try to make as many copies as you can. So if you're interested in analog, you know, you can start off small, or you can start off with something that's like big, bulky, and heavy. But I always recommend it if you want to really make sure that you hold on to your performances. It depends, though. Sometimes things just happen, though, you know, but I've noticed usually the more, like, you set aside that 15 or 20 minutes to do it, the less likely things are to go wrong, usually. Some of my favorite mixers also recommend that. I know Chris Lord-Alge talks about that a lot. His brother does as well, I believe. And a bunch of other people, you know, that just take a day, like on a Saturday, and just do your stems. It's not the most fun thing to do, but it's weird how sometimes opening up a project session 4 or 5 years later, one that you thought, oh, I won't need that, and you end up needing something from it specifically, and oh, this can't open because this plugin no longer works, or this plugin ended up corrupting the whole thing. It's like, what? And then it ends up taking you all day, and you could have went through and just, you know, had it finished in, you know, 5 seconds. I am in California, and it is 12:56 over here. Where are you from? Is a sampler analog? It's like hybrid. A hybrid. Hybrid is like when you mix analog and digital components. I would be what, I guess you could call me more of a hybrid mixer, but I lean more towards mixing with analog equipment, hardware. After what happened with that story I just told you, as far as with the DAW, that made me so frustrated that made me like want to go 90, if not 100% to, you know, analog. Pretty much at this point, I only use analog just to do, not analog. Pretty much at this point, I only use the DAW, the digital, just to do the editing. So if I'm like lining up my vocals, you know, lining up my backup vocals, things like that, I'll use the DAW for that. But for the actual main parts of recording, for the compression, for the EQ and stuff like that, I try to use analog. I also love comping with DAWs. So Studio One, for example, I think has one of the best comping features. And if you don't know what that is, we can actually talk about that in the video. It's basically like, let's say when I go to record